Well, that takes us to the big games. Chris, what are we looking at here?
Eagles +2. Is this a good line for
I
us
think
right
it's
now?
down to 1.5 now. Is that right?
Oh, it shifted over the last 2 hours.
I think the line's wrong.
The line is wrong.
All you timeless children with your predictions and flashbacks, trying to get ahead. What makes you think I can see you? What makes you think I believe you? Dreams inside my bed. Have you heard the tale? You said that I'm wasted. Shot from the past. All the dreams are flying, all the thoughts are dying. Heard something fast.
Welcome to the Prediction Trade. I'm your host, Chris Vecchio. I'm with my co-host, Jeff Joseph. We're back for a brand new edition, a brand new format of the Prediction Trade here in 2025. And we're getting things started with our Super Bowl edition. Jeff, it's good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Chris. It's been a long time since the election. It's good to be back in the saddle with you.
It is good to be back. And before the Super Bowl, we have a very special guest coming in today. But before we get there, let's talk about why we're talking about this particular topic. We see here that sports betting is now legal in 39 states and the District of Columbia. Over the past year, 20% of Americans have placed a sports bet, up from about 12% a year ago. People who are betting on sports are doing it not just for fun. They're trying to make money. 65% of sports bettors say that they're doing it, in fact, to make some money. And among sports bettors, the Super Bowl is the attraction of attractions, Jeff. 79% of sports bettors, according to a recent NerdWallet survey, are saying that they will be betting on the Super Bowl. I'm a Jets fan. You can probably see that little sad, pathetic helmet in the corner here. Quite frankly, I don't really care who wins. Do you have a bet on this year's Super Bowl?
I'll definitely have a bet on this year's Super Bowl. I'm a hack better. You know, I'm an avid prediction market wager in the same way that you are a avid options trader. When it comes to sports, for me, it's more entertainment. I've always appreciated the science and the skill of proper sports wagering. To answer your question, I know there's a lot of Kansas City fatigue out there. I would fall into that camp. Since I have no real dog in this hunt, I don't have to check any bias going into this, and that's why I'm really interested in listening to what our guest has to say.
Sure. And before we get to our guest, John Rothschild, who is a legend within the industry, let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 59 is going to be held in New Orleans in a few days' time. The Chiefs, who are 15-2, the AFC champions, are taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC champions, who went 14-3. Chiefs have a three-peat on the line. This is a dynasty in the making here. So there's a lot riding for Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, among others. Andy Reid, of course, the head coach. But this would also be the second time that the Eagles would have won a championship in the past decade. It's a different team, though, Jeff, when the team won last time. Carson Wentz went down with an injury, so you have Nick Foles step up. He's the MVP of that game, and they beat the New England Patriots 41-33. Jeff, this is a really tough game for me to pick a winner, so I guess I have to be dispassionate when going into the betting odds here.
So what I asked our crack research team at Luckbox to do was to find somebody who's like the insider's insider from a handicapper standpoint, somebody who, really kind of knows this game from the inside. And that's what we found in John Rothschild. He's an interesting guy. First of all, he wrote this book, this book right here, which I'll be referring to, Football Betting Made Easy. I've gone through it this past week, taking a good look at it. In fact, one of the things I like about what he says in his book, in this one chapter, Chapter 14 is angles that work best for the NFL. And he has 25 different plays. Things like when a double-digit favor covers in the first half, take the under in the second half. This has been hitting a little bit more than 65%. Favorites after a big loss cover 62% of the time. And what is so interesting about John when we found him and started investigating him is, unlike most of the charlatans out there in the betting world, he publishes his track record. He has for years. It's all on his website over at precisionhandicapping.com. We'll show his track record too. And he's the first to tell you that when it comes to gambling, you need only a 54% average to beat the house because of the vig and because of the way the numbers work. And he publishes his track record in football and horse races. Lifetime record on college and NFL football is 59% against the spread. So he has a auditable lifetime record. He's got a master's degree in statistics, studied behavioral finance and game theory. He's kind of our kind of guy, right? So with that, let's bring on John. I think he might be waiting in the wings out there. And well, welcome, John. It's good to have you on. We've enjoyed the time that we've spent getting to this point with you, and you've been gracious with your time. And what you have in common in your approach is how we approach the financial markets. It's a measured, risk-taking approach. It's not about gut instincts. It's all about the math and all about the numbers. So
Yeah, John, I really appreciate your time. And coming from a family where my brother has worked at FanDuel, now at Sports Grid, I don't get any picks. I don't get any information. So this is a delight. I get to brag to him that I got to speak to the great John Rothschild. So tell me, you've been in the industry for a long time now. In an era of advanced analytics and big data, what's one old school handicapping principle that you still swear by that may seem counterintuitive for modern bettors?
Everything is a compilation of lots of factors. Only thing I could think of is that football players are basically animate chess pieces. They have circadian rhythms, biological clocks. One thing you might want to look at is if a team plays 3 or 4 times away instead of playing at home like we saw with the Washington Commanders, who I think were on their 4th away game last week. After beating Detroit, pretty much didn't have a game left. They're a pretty good team. So travel is important.
John, we focus a lot on certain metrics over here at Tasty Live. We look at things like volatility, implied volatility, IVR. It's an important metric for us. Is there any significant market efficiency or metric that you've identified in football betting that's maybe part of your secret sauce, or you believe most handicappers are missing or don't value its utility as much as you do?
Yeah, and it's sort of also a way, it's called CLV, which is closing line value. We're just sort of judging how well we're usually doing. Getting good closing line value doesn't mean you're going to win your bet. Certainly gives you a little more confidence. And you want to basically beat the closing line. So, for example, maybe we got the Eagles at +3 and they go off at +1. We got 2 points of value. And there's a better chance that we're going to have better EV, better chance of making money. One thing I'd like to bring up is that there's a lot of buzzwords today. EV, people throw around a lot of things and they don't really know what they're talking about. Closing line value is wonderful. It's not as great later in the week because betting limits open up. Maybe you could bet $10,000 on a Tuesday, $20,000 or $30,000 on a Friday. Your CLV may drop. You'd still like to see that you've got better value, but it's not quite as important later in the week.
If you have positive closing line value going into game day, does that give you an opportunity to increase that wager or no?
You can. It's up to you. It depends on so many factors. I wish I could tell you there was a magic formula. We do lots of research. I am basically what you would call a bottom-up guy. I figure out what side I think I'm going to like. I process information, and then I have a team that go out and place the bets. That's their job.
All right, and you are paid a percentage of your wins, basically. You operate, when you described your business model to me, yeah, it's pretty much like a hedge fund manager. You're taking a percentage of profits essentially for the
Yeah.
advice and counsel. Yes.
In what scenario do your gut instincts ever override your statistical analysis?
Never.
Never.
So again, the answer to your question, I don't have a gut stink on anything.
John, what's the most single dangerous psychological trap you see successful handicappers fall into once they start making constant money?
Believing that you're better than you are. I sweat every game like it's my last. If I have a winning streak, I'm always afraid it's going to end. If I have a losing streak, I don't know when my winning streak is going to start. Just don't think you're a better handicapper than you are. Things happen in a game. You know, we saw Buffalo last week. If Buffalo had converted one of their 2-point conversions, and all game scenarios change, they cover.
Is there a long-held handicapping belief you've had that you've recently reversed as a result of new information? Or
Yeah, I would just say angles change constantly. You try to stay ahead of the market. They're absorbed by the market, and hopefully they're good for a few years. Then you've got to move on. So there's nothing that I hold that near and dear that I know is going to work.
you mentioned talking about college winning streaks when we were chatting. What's changed there? It's something that I know a lot of gamblers really believe in, college winning streaks. Is that something that you ascribe to?
That's such a great question. Okay, one of the best angles I ever had, which doesn't really work anymore, is that if a college football team, after let's say week 7 or week 8, depending on the scenario, loses its first game or gets taken out of a major playoff spot, or they think they're taken out, they don't cover the next game. The handicapper will say, my gosh, they're going to play harder the following week. That doesn't happen. Now, because that's sort of out there, it's eaten up by the market. And look, the college football and NFL football is maybe next to European soccer, the most efficient betting market out there. Your angles change. We've got to come up with new ones.
What's one type of bet you see sharp money consistently making that the average bettor thinks is crazy or not really worth their time. Walk me through some of the logic behind it.
So a lot of times I would say that might be a negative bet. So maybe if you're saying, I think a draft odd, a team is minus 1,000 or a player is minus 1,000, there's a pretty good reason why they might be. The betting public likes to see action. They like to see scoring. All of us, we remember big scores. We don't really remember too many big tackles. We remember touchdown passes. We remember Saquon's, Barkley's run to start the game last 2 weeks ago.
You're saying that big negative numbers are something that sharp money focuses in on?
The idea is to make a profit. You're not going to get rich overnight. And a lot of our competition, they weren't just fired from NASA.
Yeah, I think that plays well into the behavioral finance equation of loss theory, that essentially the people worry about losing more than they enjoy winning. So if you're looking at laying 480 to win 100, that doesn't reconcile, I think, with the average gambler. Doesn't want to risk 480 to win 100, regardless of what the probability might be. One of the things you've said in your book is that, it's often when you're seeing football or sports handicappers, they speak to a conviction level. This is a high conviction level wager. This is a low conviction level, or this is a 3-unit bet, not a 2 or 1 unit bet. And in your book, explicitly, you refer to something, and in fact, I'll read it right here. It says fixed dollar wagering. This goes against almost every analyst's recommendations. Most assign point values or units to individual bets. Not me. There are no locks or guarantees. One large losing bet can wipe out 3 winning ones. Bottom line is that you, for the most part, assign relatively equal amounts to all of your bets. It reminds us of a tasty philosophy, which is trade small and trade often. So you're not trying to make it all on one wager. You're trying to beat the odds over time, and you've done that with your 59% against the spread, win rate. But is that still the case? Do you treat pretty much every bet?
I mean, on any one weekend, take out the weekend coming up, you have 80 or 90 games to choose from. Pick those 10 games that you like the best. Maybe for some reason you like a game more than another one, and you might want to put a little bit more money on it. But I'm fine with fixed dollar wagering. Again, this isn't something, and everybody needs to know this out there. It's a learned process, and it's involved, and you can make a great living, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Well, and when you talk about things that you shouldn't do, betting among college students has really proliferated as a result of BetMGM and FanDuel and DraftKings apps, and they love parlays, where you clearly, and there should be no surprise to anyone who can do a little bit of math, that parlays are just not worth your investment, parlays and teaser bets. Can you say more about that? Has your thinking changed?
Teasers are okay if you play through a key number, 3, 7, even 10 or 17 in college. So I'm okay with teasers if you hit the right number. Parlay the mess. Math does not usually work.
But Jeff, let's talk about these prop bets. I think we should just start with what's a prop bet for most people. A prop bet or a proprietary bet for the Super Bowl are bets that are made outside of the standard odds for the game, not the spread, the money line, but these are specific game occurrences, team and player performances, as well as happenings during the game itself. Jeff, we have a framework here that we want to talk through with John. We're not going to talk specific bets per se, but let's talk about some of these prop bets that are on the board here for Super Bowl 59.
Analytics do play a much more important part in the Super Bowl with props and games during the rest of the year. So we said before, public likes scoring, big payouts. If you want to do an over, do it now. If you want to do an under, wait.
We're looking at some of these other prop bets here, Jeff. I see total completions by Patrick Mahomes. This year, we're talking about a 24.8 average over the last few seasons, somewhere in between 22 to 26 per game. John, what are you thinking about for the total completions here for Mr. America, Patrick Mahomes?
He had 18 against Buffalo. He had 16 against Houston. What side are you going to take?
Fair enough. Rushing
Eagles
attempts
have a better defense than both of those teams.
They do indeed. So the next one for Mahomes would be the number of rushing attempts. He's averaged about 3.86 attempts per game in his career. Do you think that this Eagles defense shuts that down?
Here's where to go the other way. I don't want to call this a gut feeling. It's just my analysis of the game. I think during the season, he might have played a little bit more controlled. I think now it's all out. It's a Super Bowl. It's a three-peat. He ran 11 times last week. He ran 7 times against Houston. The number's now up to 5.5. I would take the over.
All right. Travis Kelce, you gave us that. Averages 5.7 yards in terms of his reception yardage. It looks like, according to Circa's numbers, that 5.5 is going to be the number. What do you think?
I had 6. I don't know if I'm comfortable with 5.5, but I'll tell you why I did like 6. Public money, is this the only time of the year, the Super Bowl, when public money does affect the odds? They all see Travis Kelce, they see Taylor Swift. I heard a little girl in an interview the other day, somebody asked her who her favorite football player was. She didn't say Travis Kelce. She said Taylor Swift. So a lot of the money is going to be going on the over. Also, it's a little bit skewed because last week the Eagles played the Commanders. Zach Ertz, a former Eagle tight end, had 11 receptions. It's pulling the number up. Take the under.
Can we take the under on Taylor Swift receptions during the Super Bowl?
Yeah, well, you're going to need negative value on absolute value on that.
Saquon Barkley, 2 rushing touchdowns. This season, he has a career-high 13 rushing TDs in 16 games. Can he hit 2 TDs in the Super Bowl?
Okay, this is the Super Bowl. This isn't the regular season. He averaged 1 a game during the season, 1 a game, 1.1. Look at the over. And that means that he's going to have, it's not the over, he's going to have 2 touchdowns. I think you can get plus 350 on it. Have some fun. Don't bet the mortgage for the car payment. Have some fun with it.
Hicks, the chief safety, will he have over 3.5 tackles this year, 1.35 average tackles per game in his rookie season?
Okay, this one I like a lot. And this one really involves homework. Hicks had 5 tackles in his first 7 games. He had 18 in his last 4. He's a rookie. I think he's out of Washington State. They didn't play him that much in the beginning of the year. He's now playing 80% of his snaps. I believe the number's wrong. I would take over 3.5. That's total tackles.
All right. Well, next you gave us the first turnover will be a fumble. And I was really curious about this. Apparently 30 to 40% of turnovers are fumbles. Less than 3% of passes are intercepted, and less than 1% of run plays end in fumbles being recovered by the defensive team. But you have the first turnover will be a fumble. Obviously, this is a fun bet with a. What's the number look like on this? First of all,
Minus 160. Basically, bet $1.60, make $1. Again, that could change. But there have been 17 straight games where Kansas City and Philadelphia cumulatively have not thrown an interception. On the Eagles side, that includes a couple of substitute quarterbacks. It's still 17 games. So I think the odds are a little bit better with these 2 teams, especially after you saw what the Eagles did to Washington last week. They're great at causing fumbles. We're looking to see a fumble before an interception.
So that's interesting. So whereby typically 30 to 40% of turnovers are fumbles, you're saying based on the fact that these quarterbacks just haven't thrown interceptions in heads-up matches, or generally speaking, that the odds of that is lower. That's an interesting bet. I like it. I'm going to look for that.
These are 2 of the most controlled quarterbacks in the NFL.
We're talking about passing here. There's a prop bet up for Ken Gainwell, the Eagles running back. His first reception will be over 4.5 yards. In the notes, you point out that he's averaged 7.3 yards per reception this season. Quite frankly, I don't think much about Ken Gainwell at all, but this is an interesting name to bring up here.
I was surprised he made the team, but he looks good. He's a great backup. He can block a little bit. Again, he's got to have a reception. If not, you lose the bet. In the playoffs, he's averaged 8.3 yards a catch, so that's a no-brainer right now.
Well, Gainwell's a running back. Let's talk about the running game here a little bit. The total rushing attempts by all players in the game right now, at least the lines that I saw most recently, Kansas City was at 26.5 for the game. Philadelphia was at 36.5. That gives you about a 63 rushing attempts total for all players on both sides in the game.
Yeah. So Kansas City has had 26.5 rushing attempts per game, and Philly 36.5. So what does the number look like here?
Well, I think I was talking about total players to rush for the game.
Oh, number of players, I say.
Number of players. And this is where I think we have a good side. And again, I'm not looking at the regular season. I'm looking at the last 3 games that counted, not the last regular season game when starters didn't play. And the average was 9.33 runners per game for the 2 games combined. You get 8 runners right now. I would look at the over. And just so everybody knows, a sack does not count. In college, it does.
He gave us another fun one sounds like a trick play here. It's that Mahomes or Hurts will catch a pass. So I looked at this. There's not a lot of instances. And Mahomes caught a pass in 22. He caught one in 24. He's caught 2 passes in the last 112 games, or his 112 career games. Hurts caught 1 pass in 77 games. in his rookie season.
We look at two really aggressive coaches who have 2 weeks to work on things. Maybe we see a Philly special, although that wasn't Nick Sirianni, at plus 1250, plus 1300. This will be just a fun thing to watch the game. Again, we're not betting the mortgage on this. We're having fun. We're hoping for one of the quarterbacks to catch a pass. And if you're going to give me 13 times my money, I'll take it.
So you had a plus 1250 or plus 1300. You also had the plus 350 with Barkley getting 2 or more rushing TDs. Any other high ROI bets that you're looking at?
I'm pretty obsessive. If anybody wants to email me, go to my site. I'll give you some other ideas.
And of course, John's site is at precisionhandicapping.com. He's also the author of this book, Football Betting Made Easy, which you can find at precisionhandicapping.com as well. Well, that takes us to the big games. Chris, what are we looking at here?
Eagles plus 2. Is this a good line for us
I think
right
it's
now?
down to 1.5 now. Is that right?
Oh, it shifted over the last 2 hours.
And I tell you a little bit of a pet peeve, something that really bothers me. Is analysts, they'll pick a side, and they're like early polygenist scientists in the 1900s, they'll cram data into this to make it look like it should work. And you know what? You're going to believe them. But these analysts hit less than 50%. So take that into consideration. Again, remember, public money affects the number, which is actually probably going to go towards Kansas City. So with that being said, I think a lot of people remember 4 turnovers against Washington had against the Eagles. A lot of people know that the Chiefs have a dynasty, but this is probably the best defense Kansas City has faced. I know this has been run through the market a lot, but I'm not real religious, but there's some kind of divine intervention going on with KC. I mean, they just cover every week. Or win every week. I'm sorry, they don't cover that often. On Philly's side, and you probably know where I'm going right now, Eagles have a tremendous offensive line. Here's something that's really interesting. Do you remember the line last year with San Francisco?
2.5?
They were minus 1.5. I would say that Kansas City's not quite as good as they were last year, and that the Eagles are better. I think the line's wrong. I like the Eagles.
The line is wrong.
All right, there's our big pick. Likes the Eagles, laying 1.5. Is that where you're looking at? And you'll like the Eagles at a pick up until where?
That's a great question because, this is not really that key a number. Going from 1 to +1 to -1, wherever we stand, it's basically winning and losing the game. It's not going to end a tie. I think I'm going to stick with my Eagles at +1.5.
Is it going to be a high or low scoring game? The last thing left to cover is the total points in the game. The Eagles have averaged 27 points per game this season. The Chiefs have averaged 22. That comes out to 49. I think that's where the over-under line is right now. In fact, going back to your closing line equation, I think you've seen some closing line value in the drift from what opened to be a 51.5 over. It's come down to 49.5. Is that what you're seeing as well?
I would stick with the under. Again, public money, it's probably going to push that number up. So if you like the under, wait on it.
Well, it's a theme that I recall in your book again, is that you said that generally speaking, the public likes to bet overs and they like to bet favorites. And one of the best long-term strategies is unders and dogs overall. I thought interesting insight.
And again, it's a low-scoring game, maybe compared to the rest of the year. The playoffs have been just a ton of scoring.
Again, in terms of bankroll management, you like to treat most of your, of course, the gimmick wagers like the plus 1250 and the plus 350, you wouldn't put those bets on parity with your other bets because they don't need to be, right? Because the payoff is so strong, I would imagine. But
I'm sorry, it's just one game. We're just trying to make some money.
Bet small, bet often. It seems pretty well aligned with how we approach things here. So you'll end up, how many prop bets will you advise to your clients for this game?
We might get up to 15. There is no set number. It's what we find has good value, and we take it from there.
And these 10 that we just discussed are among those 15. All right. How long you been at this now?
I guess 22 or 23 years. And I was talked into it. This wasn't something that was on my list of things to do growing up. And also after syndicating racehorses, I thought, gosh, this has got to be so easy. It's a binary choice, one of two teams. It's tougher than picking a horse race.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we'll be watching closely. We'll be thinking of you. We're going to make sure that all your picks are included. We'll put some graphics up in the segment as well, so you'll be able to see what John is recommending on his short list for prop bets, and we know his big picks for the game. Chris, what else you want to tell our listeners?
Well, if you want to learn more about John Rothschild, head over to precisionhandicapping.com. He's currently working on his third book. You can also pick up his first book, or at least the last book on football handicapping, which Jeff has shared here on air a few times. But until then, good luck trading the Super Bowl this year. This has been the Prediction Trade. As always, as we like to say around here, thanks for tuning in. Always wager responsibly. Believe in your math, master your trade, and join us next time on the Prediction Trade.